Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment. I don't rise lightly because I was conflicted if I would support this bill 5 or 6 years ago. When we talk about marijuana, there has to be a realization that there's a black market out there in our state that's generating approximately $350 million. That market is subsidizing the lavish styles of drug dealers. What propelled me to support this type of legislation was a conversation with my son. One day he came from school and he said, "Dad, this kid in school offered me several drugs." He started naming them, marijuana being one of them, cocaine, opioids. And I said to him, "Is this readily available in school? Are children purchasing it?" "Yes, Dad, we are purchasing them." I almost had a heart attack. And it was that moment that changed my thinking. Because at that moment, I realized, you know what? These individuals who are selling the marijuana have an incentive to get these kids hooked on harder drugs. And that's where I said, we need to regulate. We need to regulate to ensure that we control it. I'll even tell you another little story. I had a very close family friend, 23 years old, smoking marijuana. I remember she was in my living room and I said, "You need to stop this. You have a 1-year-old baby, and if you don't stop, one day, I don't know what's gonna happen to you. I don't know who's gonna be raising that child." A week after, she died in a car accident. Why? Because the drug that she was smoking was infused with embalming fluid. That is what's being sold to our kids out there and even to our adults. It is for those reasons that we as a body need to pass this amendment. Because as a state, we will not have an incentive to lace marijuana with other substances. We will monitor the level of THC in the products that are being sold. This bill will have labs testing the levels of THC, the potency. That's what this bill does. You know, programs like DARE, Just Say No, don't work no more. That's in the past. This bill builds in language for education, substance education, so that we can talk to our children. As we think about Prohibition era, and we talk about alcohol, that did not work. Organized crime was even worse. We just need to open our doors and look out the street and see how our drug dealers are going after our children, our residents, our voters. That's the reality. And we need to have that conversation. Drugs are out there. Marijuana is out there. We don't know what our children or our constituents are smoking. That's the fact. We could sit here and say, you know what, that's not happening. It's going to increase more drugs. We're trying to do the opposite. We're not encouraging. We're trying to regulate. They talk about marijuana being a gateway drug. Alcohol, tobacco is the first gateway drug. Those are the things that we need to talk about. And I'll talk a little bit about some statistics that I have that shows the increase in alcohol use in our children and how marijuana has dropped. We are concerned about people being high going to work. The language in the bill prohibits that. Just the same way we treat alcohol, we will treat marijuana. If you smoke it, you cannot go to work. If you smoke it, you cannot drive. And if you do, there are consequences. It's no different. Think about that for a second. It's no different. 8 states already have passed some measure to legalize marijuana. Connecticut should be the 9th. And I'm going to stay about revenue because we agree we're not going to do that. I'm not even going to talk about that piece. Now, when we talk about moving this forward, there needs to be a realization that Connecticut voters, 63%, support this measure. As you all know, the Quinnipiac poll of 2015 clearly states that. Let's do a poll today. I'll bet you it will be close to 70. And that's the message our voters are sending. And yet, we choose to ignore it. I understand this is not an easy topic for anyone. There are risks and there are concerns, and there are legitimate concerns. But we need to do the right thing. We need to engage in that conversation. When we look at Colorado and Washington, and I'll talk a little about these statistics, the use in the past year. So when we look at 2012 and 2013, 18.76%. When we look at 2013 and 2014, that was when it was legalized, there was a spike. And that is an assumption that that would happen, right? Something legalized, something new, let's try it out. 20.81. 2014 and 2015, 18.35. Declining. Now, when we look at alcohol consumption amongst teenagers 12 to 17, and we look in the past 30 days, 2011, 36.4%. 2013, 31%. 2015, 30.2%. And I'll give you the same figures for marijuana within the 30 days. 2011, 22%. 2013, 19. And 2015, 21.2. These are figures that have been collected from when it was implemented to 2015. We'll be curious to see the figures today. But not passing this measure is not going to stop our children from smoking. Think about it for a second. How many times have you walked to the corner store and you smell the smoke of marijuana? Okay. One thing that's excellent about this bill, I was concerned, we moved this, we're talking about how many plants can an individual grow? This bill talks about 6 plants and 10 per household. Now, if I am a renter, can I grow? This bill says you cannot, only a homeowner. Those are measures that have been placed in this bill to what? To protect the public. Can you smoke in public places? No. That's in this bill. So what are we doing? We are regulating an industry that needs to be regulated. It's time that we do it. It's time that we move forward. Doing a measure like this, I see an improvement in our state. I see cost-saving measures as a consequence of this bill. I see a reduction in teenage usage, not only because of the figures that I just spoke about, but because of the fact that we will be removing the drugs from the drug dealers. We're not going to eliminate them. Let's be realistic. If we're going to talk about truth, that's the truth. It's not going to be eliminated, but it will be reduced drastically. Think about this for a second. A drug dealer that sells marijuana, will he take a risk if we pass this measure? And there's language in here that talks about penalties if you sell once we legalize. Will you take that risk? I doubt they will take that risk. There are some that won't care. They say, you know what? For me, it's a profession. I don't know nothing better to do, so I'm going to continue selling. There's others that would say it's not even worth it. That's how I see this bill impacting. I know it's far-fetched for us probably to pass this measure tonight. But we need to have the discussion. This discussion should have happened 3 or 4 years ago. Because if we don't have the discussion, we cannot educate ourselves. Because I know that we're conflicted. We're conflicted because some of our constituents are on one side, they have children, there's some legitimate concerns. There's others that support it, and you have those calling you as well. And I know you have to balance out what's best for my district, what's best for the state. But let me assure you that if we do nothing, and I will repeat this again, we will continue to subsidize the drug dealers of our state. We will continue to subsidize the lavish style. They will continue to buy the Mercedes, they will continue to buy the BMWs, and you know what? At the backs of our children and our Connecticut residents. That's what we're doing. We're going to do anything on this bill. So, I know there's others that want to speak on this measure. I could be here all night because I feel so passionate about this. I thought I was preaching there for a minute, you know? But with all respect to all my colleagues in this chamber, I respect each and every one of you. And I know it's a tough decision. But if we don't take this to a vote tonight, for a minute, just when you go home after a late night, just think of what I'm saying. Really, truly analyze. Analyze how our kids have access to marijuana and other drugs. Think about the drug dealers that are preying on our children. Think about those things. And hopefully, when you come back, you'll be in support of this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Will you care to remark further?